Hi, I'm Jason Gorber for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to talk about record sleeves.
Big shelf.
Now, I know this might be slightly ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing to be an obsessive collector, and it's another to actually worry about the condition of your records. But the fact of the matter is that what you actually store your vinyl in is actually really important. There's a bunch of record companies that, when they actually produce the vinyl, do a really exceptional job of making sure that the vinyl itself is sort of taken care of inside the cover. And then there's others that actually care a little bit less, and sort of cheap out. And you actually end up getting, if not damage on inside the record, inside the grooves, certainly some scratches and some scuffs on the outside. That happens all the time. Buy a brand new record and you're like, ugh, why is it not looking as pristine as it could be? Now, to be clear, it's been said many times before, the actual pressing of records is a very different environment than, say, the pressing of CDs. CDs are done in a clean room. I mean, DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever, they're done so that there's absolutely no contaminants whatsoever. Everybody looks like they're working on a satellite, something for NASA. Whereas a record plant, for decades now, sort of looks like more like an auto shop. And not one of those crazy Formula One shops that, also look like NASA. But, everything's like, there's a bunch of dust flying around, there's a bunch of stuff going on. So forget all the contaminants that potentially are going to get sort of into the pressing. Hopefully that is alleviated. But the fact of the matter is that when they're packaged and stored, there's paper shards going around. It's not the cleanest place ever, which is why you actually want to clean your records, even if they are brand new. Often I put a run through my degritter. Those of you who are fans of the channel are well aware of my degritter reviews. You're welcome to check that out now. If you look at how the sleeves actually operate, they're really obviously protecting the vinyl inside the case and doing a decent job. Now, the worst version for me is this guy. This is just a plain paper with a hole in the middle. And when I get records like this, in sleeves like this, it just drives me nuts. Because even just pulling it out, I think that, even though it feels like it should be smooth paper, I just find that these do such a miserable job, especially if the old ones. They're like, the people who for decades have been pulling them in and out of paper sleeves like this. And what I do, and I've shown this before, what I do is, if the record's in here, I actually rip it out. So I actually remove the record directly without ever pulling it out and just ripping the sleeve that way. Sort of one level up for that for me is the sort of plastic, the plain plastic, polyethylene, polypropylene, whatever. It gets all very confusing. I'm not a plastics engineer like in The Graduate, but nonetheless, this is a relatively stable way of having your records sort of in a safe environment. It's certainly a lot better than the paper, and does a decent job. Again, because the way that works, you can see that it's sort of translucent, not transparent. So it's a little bit cloudy. It's not the best way to actually read labels, but it does a fairly decent job. The sort of top line of the normal, the sort of baseline that we would want ideally from all record companies is this, which is a poly-lined paper sleeve. So the paper gives it a little bit more durability. Ideally, it's acid-free paper so that it'll actually last a while. And inside is a very thin sheet of poly that, as you can see, sort of the poly protects the record. The paper allows you to slide it in out without any drama, and then you're good to go. There are also Japanese sleeves, these sort of half circle things with the plastic. I only have these in a couple Japanese pressings. I'm not a huge fan of these, and usually I replace them. I sometimes keep the original sleeve, but you can see what it's sort of done. It sort of tucks it gets a little bent, and it's a little bit harder to get the stuff in and out. One thing that we haven't actually discussed are those record companies that actually put the records inside the sort of colored printed sleeves. Those aren't quite as bad as the ones that I'm ripping apart, but also I'm not as big of a fan. A lot of record releases, major releases now, actually will include those sort of printed inners, but still put the records on a polyline paper sleeve, and I'm a big fan of that. And then you have the sort of definitive thing that most collectors actually sort of go towards, which is a mobile Fidelity sleeve. Now, this is a MoFi sleeve from back in the day. It doesn't have any of their branding on it. This is 1970 something MoFi sleeve, and it just shows how long it's been that they've been using this. And essentially what it is again, plastic that's enveloping this sort of paper area on the inside. So the record sort of goes into the plastic, and on the other side is paper. The paper gives it structure and gives it a certain rigidity, and it actually allows you to pull it in and out of a sleeve very easily. The new ones are actually branded. So MoFi sleeves, anybody who's been collecting is well aware of their use. If you actually get some from other, some pressing plants, stuff like QRP, they use very similar imported sleeves, very almost identical, at least visually. Above that, then you have the really silly stuff. This is essentially sort of a woven material. It feels sort of like the kind of soft material that you actually get wrapped around electronics when you get it. And this is for, I have this for, these are very expensive, but I have these for a couple absolutely premium records. I sometimes keep them in this. Again, it keeps the structure sort of intact, and I have no issues. But I have not spent a lot of money worrying about this kind of stuff. Which leads us to why we're doing this video. It's actually been almost impossible to get mobile Fidelity sleeves here in Canada. There's a bunch of retailers that have a couple of them in, but based on what's going on with the border, based on shipping stuff, based on the expense of it, based on how expensive they're getting, it's becoming a real issue wherever you are. I happen to be in Canada, but wherever you are. And so I was extremely excited about a gentleman that I had heard of who had made a company, I guess it's been going on for a couple of years now, vinylstoragesolutions.ca. Now, this isn't a commercial for him. I'm not pimping any of his stuff. I'm just here to look for a solution of what I need, which is to find somebody slightly more local where I can actually get this stuff for my new releases. It's been such a pain dealing with getting the other sleeves that this is a direction I went to. So if you look at, again, straight up MoFi, this is what his solution looks like. Look familiar? So if I just literally take this record out from the MoFi and put it in to this, it's a little bit clearer. It's easier to sort of read the label. The structure is there. It's a little bit, this one is listed as the 2mm version, and you can see that it's a little bit less floppy than the Mobile Fidelity. The structure seems even better, frankly, than the Mobile Fidelity, just on first use. And these are, especially for those of us in Canada, but even in Europe, these are actually extremely economical to get. vinylstoragesolutions.ca has actually signed them for a relatively reasonable rate, and they absolutely seem structured as good, if not better, than the thing that they're very much echoing. Now, what I find even more interesting is that there's actually a model up from this, which is very robust, which is, if this is the 2mm, this is the 3mm version. Now, again, if I replace it, we just have slightly different plastic on the outside. And now I have sort of the best of all worlds. I have something that's extremely solid and stable. Even if I try to sort of misshape it, it goes out. Me sliding this in and out of a record is extremely, extremely simple to do. Simply because of the structure, you can actually go in there and it's not bending, it's not doing its elements, it's just absolutely in there. It's just absolutely being inserted without any issues. And you can see, absolutely rock solid. And so I was very skeptical about any of this stuff. And so as my sort of first look at the stuff from vinylstoragesolutions.ca, I had hoped they would be this good, and I am ecstatic about how they're actually structured, and the fact that I can get them at a reasonable price from somebody who, for me, involves essentially, within Canada shipping is a fantastic thing. I definitely think that they're worth giving a shot to. See how they behave differently than MoFi. I don't know anything about the plastic engineering. I'm actually hoping to have a conversation with them about how this is different, about whether we are worried about sort of long term. I know that the mobile fidelity style solution has been going on for literally half a century at this point, and so that I know that I'm really confident about its archival purposes for my collection. But I strongly believe that these are at least as good as what we're dealing at as their competitors, and my ability to get it locally is absolutely an upsell. The fact that it's 3 mil, the difference between 2 and 3, it's not so significant, but it's one of those things. If it's only for a couple dollars more, I like the fact that it is much more structured, much more rigid for investing in your records, for stuff that you actually want to keep long term. It seems to me a better way to go. Anyway, there's a quick look at record inner sleeves. I'd be super interested to hear in your comments if you have any experience with any of these, what your preferred way of actually storing your records inside is. I look forward to hearing from you, and we will see you next video. For thatshelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.